There is a kind of intelligence that makes people uncomfortable. It's not academic. It's not polite. It doesn't quote statistics or wear a suit. It is raw. It is sharp. It sees through masks. And it is dangerous not because it harms, but because it cannot be deceived. This is the kind of intelligence Machiavelli understood. The kind that doesn't ask for permission. The kind that watches quietly while others speak and moves only when the moment is right. If you're prepared to go deeper than you've ever gone to dismantle illusions, to question your sense of morality, to see how power truly works, then keep watching. Because once you learn to think the way Machiavelli did, you will never look at the world the same way again.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
We live in a world obsessed with appearances. Success is measured in likes, virtue in slogans, intelligence in credentials. But underneath the stage, there's a darker current, a realm where real decisions are made, where true intentions are hidden behind smiles, where manipulation is a language and power is the only currency. Machiavelli didn't invent this world. He exposed it. He held up a mirror to human nature and said, "This is how it actually works." Not how we wish it worked. Not how religion or morality says it should work, but how it does. That's why so many people fear his ideas. Because they strip away the comfort of illusion. They force us to confront the truth. Most people are not moved by reason. They are moved by fear, by reward, by perception. And if you don't understand that, you will be controlled by those who do. This is the first law of dangerous intelligence. You must learn to observe not what people say, but what they respond to. Because people lie with their words, but they reveal everything with their patterns. Machiavelli wrote, "It is much safer to be feared than loved, if one must choose." But most people misunderstand this. He wasn't advocating cruelty. He was describing leverage. He was saying that when people respect your boundaries, they behave differently. When they know you're willing to walk away, they stop trying to manipulate you. When they sense strength, they stop testing you. This isn't about dominance. It's about clarity. It's about knowing what you stand for and being immune to emotional blackmail. Have you ever wondered why the most manipulative people often seem the most charming? Why they flatter, joke, smile only to vanish when you need them most? Machiavelli warned us, men are ungrateful, fickle, liars, and deceivers. That sounds harsh until you remember how many times you've been betrayed by someone who said all the right things. We are taught to judge people by their words, but Machiavelli teaches us to judge them by their incentives. What do they want? What do they gain by being good to you? What would happen if they didn't need you anymore? To think like Machiavelli is to develop the discipline of detachment. It is to observe without reacting, to listen without rushing to respond, to gather information silently. It is not coldness, it is precision. Because when you become emotionally reactive, you become easy to control. People can trigger you, guilt you, flatter you into submission. But when you learn to stay still, to question the intention behind every compliment, every favor, every apology, you begin to see the game. And make no mistake, it is a game. Life is not fair. People are not always good. Morality is a luxury of the safe. But that does not mean you must become corrupt. It means you must become conscious. You must stop expecting the world to reward your goodness. It won't. The world rewards clarity, strategy, timing. Machiavelli knew this. He wrote not to destroy virtue, but to protect it from naivete, from manipulation, from those who weaponize kindness for power. Imagine this: you walk into a room. You say little, but you see everything. You know who's insecure, who needs approval, who's lying to themselves. You don't need to expose them. You simply know. You navigate the room like a chessboard, not by controlling others, but by refusing to be controlled yourself. This is not arrogance. This is awareness. And when you have it, people feel it. They feel that you are not moved by flattery, not shaken by conflict, not seduced by popularity. You become unpredictable and therefore powerful. But power without principle is destruction. That is the paradox Machiavelli leaves us with. You must learn to use darkness without becoming it, and to manipulate reality without lying to yourself, to understand fear without creating it. And this requires inner alignment. You must know who you are, what you value, what you will and will not do. Because once you begin to see how easily people are influenced, you will be tempted to use it for ego, for revenge, for self-gain. That is the test of all dangerous intelligence. Can you know the truth and still choose the higher road? Jung called this the integration of the shadow. The process of owning your darkness, not denying it. Because what you deny controls you, but what you integrate, you master. When you admit that you are capable of manipulation, of deception, of cruelty, you stop projecting those things onto others. You stop being surprised when people lie. You stop being shattered when people betray you. You expect it. And because you expect it, you prepare for it. That is not paranoia. That is wisdom. Let's ask a difficult question. How much of your life has been shaped by your desire to be liked? How many times have you said yes when you wanted to say no? Silenced yourself to avoid conflict? Betrayed your truth for approval? This is not kindness. This is fear. And Machiavelli would have called it a weakness. Not because you're soft, but because you're untrained. Dangerous intelligence means learning to say no. To walk away is to stand alone if you must. Because a man who cannot say no is a man who will always be used. You don't need to become ruthless. You need to become real. Real about your boundaries, real about your goals, real about your own psychology. Machiavelli said, "The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves." One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves. This is the balance. Cunning and strength, strategy and power, reflection and action. You must learn to be both. Not to dominate others, but to protect your own soul from being swallowed by the illusions of the world. Now pause. Ask yourself, what illusion are you still living under? What nice persona are you hiding behind? What truth are you afraid to accept about yourself or the people around you? Because until you face that truth, you are not free. You may be good, you may be liked, but you are not free. And if you are not free, you are vulnerable. Machiavelli's true gift is not in teaching us how to deceive. It is in teaching us how not to be deceived, how to see through charm, how to navigate power, how to lead without begging for love, how to walk into any room with your eyes open, heart guarded, and mind sharp. Once you learn this, once you see what others don't, you will become a threat to every system built on lies. And that is why this video will make you dangerously smart. Stepping deeper into Machiavellian thought means stepping away from illusions, especially the ones we create about ourselves. It's easy to study power as something external, something that exists in politics or business, far from our day-to-day lives. But the truth is that power begins internally. If you cannot rule your own mind, your emotions, your impulses, then someone else will. Machiavelli's brilliance rests not only in his understanding of others, but in the demand that we confront ourselves first. Think about how often your actions are driven by the fear of being misunderstood, disliked, or abandoned. How many times have you said yes when you meant no, just to keep the peace? These are not small compromises, they are quiet, repeated betrayals of your own sovereignty. Machiavelli warned us that those who cannot command themselves will always be commanded by others. And in a world that rewards conformity, the greatest rebellion is to think and act from your own center. To be dangerously smart is not to manipulate others, it is to no longer be manipulated. It is to see the strings behind every smile, the motive behind every compliment, the fear behind every insult. It is to observe what others miss because they are too busy reacting, overthinking, or needing to be liked. This kind of intelligence is not loud. It is subtle, patient, and devastatingly precise. Machiavelli wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are." Most people live their entire lives trapped in appearances, building identities based on what gets them approval. But appearance is not strength. It is a mask, and masks always crack under pressure. Dangerous intelligence means you stop needing to be seen a certain way and start being who you truly are unapologetically and without disguise. The world will resist this. People will call you arrogant, cold, or antisocial not because you are, but because you've stopped giving them the emotional access they once fed on. When you no longer dance to the rhythms of their validation, they panic. But their discomfort is not your concern. Your concern is truth, clarity, and alignment. Self-mastery is the foundation of everything Machiavelli taught. It's not about becoming untouchable in some cartoonish sense, it's about becoming internally stable. So stable that chaos doesn't sway you, that praise doesn't inflate you, that criticism doesn't dismantle you. Most people are at the mercy of every passing mood or opinion. But you must become a fortress. This doesn't mean you stop feeling. On the contrary, it means you feel deeply, but you don't act impulsively. You give your emotions space to speak, but you don't let them drive the car. You learn to observe your own mind the way a strategist observes a battlefield. And in doing so, you gain the ability to respond, not react. One of Machiavelli's most misunderstood ideas is the principle that it is better to be feared than loved, if one cannot be both. This is not a license to be cruel. It's a call to be respected. People love what is useful and abandon what is inconvenient. But when they respect you, they will think twice before crossing your boundaries. Respect starts with your own behavior. Do you respect your own time, your own energy, your own values? Or do you constantly compromise them for temporary harmony? Machiavelli would say that the person who cannot protect their own dignity will never be taken seriously by others. Because those who lack boundaries become tools in the hands of manipulators. We must then ask ourselves the harder questions. What values do you stand for? What lines will you never cross, even if it costs you popularity or comfort? What are you willing to lose in order to keep your integrity? These are not intellectual questions, they are spiritual ones. And how you answer them will shape the quality of your life. When you gain insight into human nature, there is a temptation to use it for control. You begin to see how easily people are influenced, how deeply they crave attention, how quickly they fold under pressure. You could take advantage of that. But should you? That is the ethical tension at the heart of being dangerously smart. What separates manipulation from mastery is your intention. Are you seeking to elevate yourself through control or to elevate others through clarity? Are you feeding your ego or are you building something greater than yourself? Power without purpose becomes poison. But power in the hands of someone with vision becomes service. Machiavelli was not interested in fantasy. He was not concerned with how we wish the world worked, he was concerned with how it does work. He stripped away idealism and revealed the mechanisms beneath the surface. And he did it not to make us cynical, but to make us conscious. Because only the conscious are truly free. You cannot be free if you do not understand the forces acting on you: social, emotional, psychological. You cannot be free if you are still afraid of being judged, still attached to your public image, still enslaved by the need to be liked. Freedom requires solitude. It requires discomfort. It requires the courage to be misinterpreted. This is why most people avoid dangerous intelligence. It costs too much. It requires letting go of illusions, releasing the safety nets of groupthink, and facing your own potential without excuses. It is much easier to be agreeable, to follow the crowd, to say what people want to hear. But agreeableness will never make you sovereign. Machiavelli would tell you this: the path of power begins when you stop asking for permission, when you stop waiting for the world to validate your worth, when you realize that your time, your energy, your vision, these are not things to be negotiated. They are sacred, and those who do not honor them do not belong in your inner circle. So now you must decide, will you remain in the comfort of illusion, or will you step into the discomfort of truth? Will you keep performing for approval, or will you begin to live from alignment? Will you stay liked and controlled, or will you become feared and respected? These questions are not rhetorical. They are the door to a new life. And once you walk through that door, you cannot go back. You will see manipulation where others see charm. You will sense desperation where others see kindness. You will recognize cowardice behind masks of virtue. And above all, you will see yourself not as society defined you, but as you truly are. This is the beginning of power. Not power over others, but power over your own mind. That is what makes you dangerous. That is what makes you free. That is what Machiavelli intended, not to turn us into monsters, but to awaken us from the dream. When you begin to see the world through the Machiavellian lens, something irreversible happens. Your innocence fractures, and in its place, clarity is born. This clarity doesn't make you cynical, it sharpens your perception. You begin to notice how easily people are influenced by symbols, titles, and illusions of power. You understand that most people don't want truth, they want comfort. And those who control comfort control the masses. Machiavelli understood that society is not built on truth, but on myth. Governments, institutions, even relationships are often sustained by carefully maintained illusions. The vulgar crowd, he wrote, always is taken by appearances, and the world consists chiefly of the vulgar. It's a brutal statement, but it cuts to the core of human behavior. People believe what looks real, not what is real. This is why Machiavelli emphasized image. Not because substance doesn't matter, but because power begins in perception. If people believe you are strong, they will treat you as strong. If they believe you are weak, they will test you. The wise man, therefore, does not ignore perception, he masters it. But there is a deeper lesson here. You must not only shape how others see you, you must shape how you see the world. Dangerous intelligence begins with the courage to see clearly, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. Because the truth will cost you your comfort, your illusions, and maybe even your relationships. But what it gives in return is non-negotiable: sovereignty. To be sovereign is to belong to yourself. It is to operate from internal certainty, not external validation. It is to make decisions based on wisdom, not pressure. And it is to lead, whether in your family, your business, or your own life, not by begging for agreement, but by embodying direction. You become the calm in the chaos, the anchor in the storm, the one who is not moved by trends, opinions, or gossip. But to reach this level, you must first pass through a fire, the fire of isolation. As you become more awake, you will start to feel the distance between yourself and the crowd. The conversations that once entertained you now feel hollow. The friendships that once comforted you now feel performative. You will begin to crave depth and find that depth is rare. This loneliness is not a curse. It is a rite of passage. Every truly sovereign thinker must walk through the desert of detachment. Detachment from the need to be liked. Detachment from the need to explain. Detachment from the need to belong. And in that silence, you begin to hear your own voice again. Machiavelli would remind you that greatness is not found in comfort, it is forged in solitude. He studied history not to escape the present, but to understand the timeless patterns of power. He saw that every great leader, whether feared or loved, had one thing in common: they were willing to be alone in their vision. They did not wait for permission to act. They acted and the world adjusted. So ask yourself this: where in your life are you still waiting? Waiting for others to approve, to understand, to support? What if that support never comes? What if the people around you never evolve, never awaken, never match your growth? Are you willing to continue anyway? Because that's what it takes. It takes giving up the fantasy that everyone will come with you. They won't. Some people are addicted to comfort. Some are married to their limitations. And some will resent you for changing because your growth threatens their stagnation. Machiavelli knew this. That's why he warned rulers to be careful with generosity, to be strategic with loyalty, and to never assume that goodwill lasts forever. He wasn't trying to make you paranoid, he was trying to make you prepared. The moment you stop expecting loyalty from the untested is the moment you stop being blindsided by betrayal. This is not about distrust, it is about discernment. The dangerously smart do not assume they observe. They do not hope they verify. They do not attach they align. And when something no longer aligns, they do not beg they release. Release is power. Because every time you let go of something that no longer serves you, you free the energy to build what does. You stop leaking time into dead conversations, dead-end relationships, and dead dreams. You begin to move with purpose, with clarity, or with precision. This is the Machiavellian path, redefined not as manipulation, but as mastery, not as cruelty, but as clarity, not as domination, but as direction. You stop reacting, you start responding. You stop proving, you start embodying. And the more you embody this, the more you attract those who are also awake. You will no longer need to chase connection. You will become a magnet for those who resonate with your frequency. The fake will fall away not because you push them, but because the game no longer works on you. The masks no longer fool you. The noise no longer distracts you. Now you must ask yourself, how much longer will you dim your light to comfort others? How much longer will you shrink your vision so others don't feel insecure? How much longer will you explain your boundaries to people who benefit from crossing them? Because once you become dangerously smart, you won't have time for these games. You'll be too busy building, creating, leading. You'll be too focused on reality to entertain fantasy. You'll be too connected to truth to be seduced by appearances. This is the final level, when you no longer need to play the game because you've risen above it. You don't manipulate people, you move purposefully. You don't control outcomes, you influence through presence. You don't chase power, you are power, because you've mastered the only kingdom that matters, the one within. And from that place, you become untouchable. Not because you're invincible, but because you're authentic. Because you've faced your fears, your flaws, your shadow, and you've integrated them. You've become whole. And wholeness is terrifying to those who live in fragments. So let the world misunderstand you. Let them label you cold, intimidating, intense. You are not here to be digestible. You are here to be real. And in a world built on illusion, there is nothing more dangerous than a person who sees clearly and still chooses to walk with purpose. This is what Machiavelli gave us, not a license to deceive, but a framework to awaken, to stop playing by rules that were never made for us, to stop waiting for justice in a world that rewards strategy, to stop hoping for fairness in a game that rewards clarity. So now, the real question is this: what will you do with this awareness? Will you return to your comfort zone, pretending you didn't see what you just saw? Or will you step into the arena not to prove, but to be? Because once you become dangerously smart, you don't go back. You go forward with eyes open, mind sharp, and soul intact. And that, my friend, is the most dangerous thing of all.